Hello and welcome to another episode of Taylor Talks Comics. Today I'm going to be talking about the Metabarons by Alejandro Jodorowsky and Juan Gimenez. Stay tuned. All right, this big chunk of a collection is put out by Humanoids, great publisher of European comics here for the American audience. This includes the first 4 parts of the Metabarons, which is all the parts that Juan Gimenez drew for Alejandro Jodorowsky. I do have the second cycle, which I'll be doing in a separate video to talk about the complete saga of Metabarons. But if you're not familiar with Alejandro Jodorowsky's work, I do have a video on my channel, which I'll probably link above some point during this video, where I show all of my Alejandro Jodorowsky books that I have in my collection. He's one of my all-time favorite comic book writers. People often ask me when they hear that where to start. They're intrigued by this. They're intrigued by European comics or Alejandro Jodorowsky, who was Chilean as a writer. But a lot of his stuff was released in France or Europe originally, his comics at least. But this is one of the great places to start. I'd either start with this or the Incal, whichever one strikes your fancy between the two. They do both take place in the same universe. The Incal came first. Like the Incal was where Alejandro Jodorowsky and Mobius took a lot of their concepts that they worked on the Dune movie together. The original Dune theatrical movie that they're trying to put together. There's a great documentary about it called Jodorowsky's Dune, if you want that. A lot of those concepts went into the Incal comic and also Metabarons, but the Incal was done first, so if you want to start there, that's also where the Metabaron character on the cover here debuts. But the stories in this book all take place before the Incal, so you can start here and be okay. It's really just a choice of which one strikes your fancy, because they're pretty different in tone, even though they're from the same universe. In the Jodoverse, where a lot of Alejandro Jodorowsky's comics and stories take place in the same universe, called the Jodoverse. Sometimes people call it the Incalverse. But there's a whole mythology throughout all these stories, and it's less confusing than it seems, and less daunting than it seems, because you can really kind of pick up and start a lot of different places and not be lost, and following just like one tale of the story. Because, like I said, the Metabaron character debuts in the Incal, but he's kind of like I don't want to say a background character, because he is an important character, but he's almost like two-dimensional. And I know that sounds insulting, because people are like, two-dimensional characters. That's like an insult usually. By two-dimensional, I mean he's not fleshed out fully. He's fleshed out in this book, so it's kind of like you're introduced to the character, but you get to know the character in the story, if that makes sense. So this is a great collection. This is the first Metabarons hardcover, or I guess the most recent one that's still in print. I think they have reprinted it. It might look a little bit different on the spine, but it collects all the same material. Maybe the cover's different too, I don't know. But great opening page. Here's all of the... here's the Jodoverse. So if you're trying to look for more stories within the Jodoverse, here's the Metabaron series. This book that we're holding right now contains... just the volumes 1 through 4 here. So it's got Othon and Honorota, Agnar and Oda, Steelhead and Dona Vincenta, and Agora in The Last Metabaron. And the Genesis Kostaka is a short story. I'll do a separate video where you can find that. Same thing with Weapons of Metabaron. And then the ongoing cycle, as of this printing of this book, 4 didn't come out yet, but it did just come out recently. So it's actually done now. It says coming out 2020. I don't know if it came out in its original language in 2020 and met its deadline, but it didn't come out in print in English until 2024. And then the Incal series, you have before the Incal, Final Incal. Then you also have the Megalex and Techno Priest spin-offs. And then Deconstructing the Metabarons and Deconstructing the Incal are kind of reference books. So, again, it can be confusing, but It doesn't have to be. It's also one reason why I want to make these videos, to kind of explain things to people. Here's an introduction by, oh no, the afterwards by David Goyer, sorry. The introduction here is part of the story. It's kind of explaining where you're at in the story and whatnot. And Humanoids did do a oversized deluxe edition box set, kind of similar to the Incal one that I've showed off in my video, like this. They've reprinted it. This is the second printing of this Incal oversized slipcase. I'm hoping they reprint this one, because this was originally limited to like 2,000 copies or something, and I missed out on it. And I'd love to have this artwork in as big oversized format as possible, because once I start turning these pages, you're going to see how great Juan Gimenez is as an artist. So that's the introduction here. And then we get implanted into the story, and you meet these two robots instantly, which I know Tonto is one of them. I'm trying to figure out the other name. I'm the worst with character names, but I know one of them was Tonto. But anyways, the whole conceit of the story is that you have these two robots telling you everything that's happening within the story. So like this little robot, Tonto, has in his database the entire saga of Metabarons, and he's explaining it to this other robot. And there's a funny back and forth to the two of them, with their arguing and bickering with each other, and him, like one robot telling him like, wait till tomorrow and I'll continue the story. And then kind of is a nice little bit of a levity in the story, a little bit of humor in this very harrowing, deep saga that we're about to read. So it kind of brings a little levity to the story. And these characters are not just bit characters as narrators. They actually do play a role in the story itself, which you'll see as well. So that's kind of like the storytelling device they use to tell the story here. But what is the Metabarons? So you'll find out in the Incal. Again, I'm just going to flip through this great Juan Gimenez artwork, and I just want you to admire how amazing it is. It's brilliant. It's like this painterly artwork. It's just eye-popping. It's insane and really ridiculous that he was doing this back in the late 80s, early 90s when the story was being made, is when this came out. But yeah, so the Metabaron that you meet in the Incal, you find out that he's like the greatest warrior on Earth. Nobody can defeat him. He's invincible, and he's like this ultimate fighter, just barbarian, mercenary that nobody can defeat. Greatest warrior on Earth. That's like the way you can say it. And but in this story, you see the whole lineage of the Metabaron family fleshed out into finding out how they come about. And the Metabaron itself is a title that's getting passed down through your family. So the Metabaron will have a child with his wife, and it'll be a son, and that son will then become the next Metabaron, but not until that son grows up, is trained to be a fierce warrior by his father, and has to kill his dad. So it's kind of like this weird like religious tradition of this, is that there can only be one Metabaron, and in order to become the Metabaron, you have to kill your father, who's the previous Metabaron. So it's really messed up. This ultra-violent space opera is like how I would explain this. It's very European in the sense that sex and violence comes at a easier clip for them than it does maybe for an American audience. But it is definitely rated R, I would say. I would not give this to a child, and probably not even a teenager, without reading it myself as a parent. But it's not just a straightforward space saga either. Like Alejandro Jodorowsky, what makes him a brilliant writer is that he has a lot of... Look at these giant space battles, though. Just admire that on the page. The artwork in here is immaculate. Alejandro Jodorowsky has a lot of like esotericism, a lot of Eastern mysticism that he likes to explore. He's really into like tarot cards, or tarot, I guess. I'm not familiar with this, so hopefully I'm not insulting anybody. And these are all things that really interest him as a human and as a writer. So these things are all explored within this as a backdrop. Like, it's not like on in your face, so like you're not seeing anybody practice tarot or anything, but you can see like someone that is interested in these weird kind of weird's probably insulting, but these like Eastern mysticism and esoteric kind of ideas would then explore them in a storytelling, and that's where we get these kind of crazy concepts. So it's not just straightforward. There's a lot of metaphorical content. I would say too, in here, I think if Sigmund Freud were to read this, he would have probably nightmares in his own right. There's a lot of Freudian kind of metaphors with some of the characters and how they depict things. Another characteristic of the Metabaron is they all have one artificial limb of some kind, whether it be losing their feet or a hand or an arm or maybe even a head. That's one characteristic of the Metabaron as well. And I don't want to spoil much for you because, like I said, the lineage gets passed down from father to son, father to son, father to son. But there are a lot of twists and turns that happen in that lineage where it doesn't always happen as perfectly as you'd want that to be passed down. Sometimes things go wrong, and sometimes you have to go with the flow if you're one of these Metabaron characters. And the artwork, though, is absolutely brilliant throughout. Like I said, like this to me is like the ultimate space opera. People might cite like Star Wars as like their favorite space opera. Like this to me is my favorite space opera. I can't get enough of the culture and the world building that's created here by Alejandro Jodorowsky and Juan Gimenez. The artwork is brilliant. The brutality and the violent aspects of this are brilliant. The characters are all like some characters as total egomaniacal beings that like are so stubborn and feel justified in their own beliefs and whatnot, and those are challenged by other characters. This is the Metabaron character that we are familiar from the Incal, who's known in here as the last Metabaron. But yeah, just totally epic. Like that's the best way to best word I can think to describe it too. Just when you get done reading this, you're gonna take a breath of fresh air and just be like, I don't even know if I can read another comic that will top that. Like this is one of the greatest comics of all time, in my opinion. Between this and the Incal, I don't know which would make my list of greatest comic of all time. They both impressed me in so many different ways. The fact that Alejandro Jodorowsky he's one of those writers like an Alan Moore who gets so much out of his artists with how he challenges them in their scope and what they can draw. And just I don't know, just everything is so amazing in this thing. But like, look at this. How can you not see that and instantly want to read this book? So yeah, if you're into space operas that have like a lot of religious aspects to them, that's where a lot of the Dune influence comes from too. Like I said, Alejandro Jodorowsky had this very high concept idea for what the Dune movie would become. And it was, like I said, it was very ambitious. He had like Pink Floyd on the film score. He had Mobius doing all the storyboards. He had H.R. Giger do a lot of the character designs and whatnot. I think Chris Foss, who did a lot of the old sci-fi pulp covers, was also on the artwork. And it's just an insanely ambitious project. And that got canned because it was proven to be too expensive to make. And that was just a few years before the original Star Wars movie came out. So it's one of those like great what-ifs of Hollywood. Like if the Dune movie from Jodorowsky came out, would that have been the great space opera that kicked off the sci-fi craze in Hollywood throughout the 70s and 80s? But that story Bible, they put together like a story Bible that had all the storyboards in there and the H.R. Giger and Mobius and Chris Foss artwork in there and the scripts and everything. And they passed it around to Hollywood studios trying to get the movie funded, and they all said no, but there were a lot of concepts from those stories that we then saw in Alien Dinosaurs. I mean, if you weren't sold already, are you now? But you'd see some of those concepts appear in Star Wars or Alien. The original Alien movie had H.R. Giger, Mobius, and Dave O'Bannon, who was writing the script for Dune, all a part of the making of that movie. So some of those concepts went into that movie as well. But Jodorowsky didn't just let everyone steal his ideas. He took a lot of those and put them into his own comics. So I think a lot of like the religious natures, it does come with a ribbon too. Very nice. A lot of the religious aspects to it and like the kind of like tribalism and adherence to with stubborn fiercity to your own beliefs and backgrounds. All of that's, I think, inherent in this as well. And some of the like the spice being a source of like the main source of what people kind of live off of and the kind of revolves around. There's a similar aspect of that in Metabarons as well, where you can probably see some allegories to a real world aspect where we are like all consumed by technology and fuel and oil and stuff, and how that kind of is the impetus for a lot of our wars and whatnot. Like that's all, those themes are all in here as well. So a lot of family, religious themes, exploration, all that's fueled throughout this book. But yeah, this is just the Juan Gimenez era of Metabarons, so it's the first 4 volumes. Here's another great image, like look at that. I don't know how this artwork doesn't sell you on it. If you're not already buying this book and ordering this before this video's over, then I'm going to be confused by your taste in comics. Just kidding. Just kidding. We all love what we love. You do get an afterword by David Goyer in the back. He's the scriptwriter for the original Batman movie. And then he also, I think he wrote Batman Begins as well. He's a scriptwriter in Hollywood. He's also written comics. Here's the continuation of the Metabaron in the books here, which I'll show you in another video. And here's a little bit of description of the Jodoverse with some of the books involved in that. So let me know in the comments, have you read the Metabarons? Have you is it one of your favorite Alejandro Jodorowsky books? How do you rank it amongst your favorite space operas? And if you haven't read Metabarons and this has sold you on it, let me know that as well. It's one of the greatest compliments I get from viewers when they say, I totally bought this because of you. I can't like enough. The only compliment better than that is when someone tells me, I bought this comic and I loved it, and I first heard about it on your channel, or you sold me on it. But yeah, check out my other Alejandro Jodorowsky videos. I'm planning on doing a lot. I feel like there's not enough Alejandro Jodorowsky content on YouTube, and it's kind of my goal to fix that, because I think he's one of the greatest writers in all of comics history. If you want to follow me on social media or get a hold of me on social media, it's all down below in the description. I do have Organic Price Books promo codes. You can use those if you want to save money on comics and graphic novels at organicpricebooks.com. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, comment down below, and I will reply. I love talking comics. Have a good one. Keep reading comics.